Good evening, folks. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Hopping on a minute or so early here just to make sure our tech is running and everything is good. Let me know in the chat function when you're able to see my screen. It should say trellising and irrigation. We'll hang tight here for a second. Perfect. Okay, I can see it on my end here. Let me know in the chat function that you're able to see my screen. Should say trellising and irrigation. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Connor. Great to have you. Melinda, welcome. Carolyn, welcome. Cal, great to have you. Folks, let me know in the chat function, where are you joining us from this evening? Where's everybody dialing in from? Let's hear a little bit around where everybody is joining us from. All right, Janice is over in Chilliwack. Linda's out in Vernon. Who's going to be the first one that's not in BC here? Petra over in Calgary. Cal's in Surrey. Caroline's in Canoe. Nelson. Oyama, wonderful. Hey, Suzanne, great to have you. Calgary, East Van, love it. And let me know in the chat function, what crop are you most excited to be growing this season? What's everybody most excited to be getting out and into the garden? I think, maybe this year for me, I think I might go with peppers. And the reason why is because I have successfully overwintered a whole bunch of cayenne peppers. There's already probably like 20 to 30 red peppers on the plants that are ready to be harvested. So I'm really excited to now move those back out into the garden to be grown for the season ahead here. All right, Connor with the hot peppers as well. Connor, you got to check out my videos on how to overwinter your peppers. It's so cool because literally like the season hasn't even started and I'm already harvesting hot peppers off my plants. Watermelons, Winnie, I grow some watermelons here. I go with the personal size one. They are absolutely fantastic, especially in like the late summer, early fall, when the temperatures at night start getting a little bit cooler. Harvest one of them in the morning. It's going to be nice and cool on the inside from that cooler nighttime temperature. It's just a divine way to start the day. All right, folks, great. We already got more than 100 folks on the line here. Love to see it. Okay, well, let's go ahead and start diving in. And I'm super, super excited for this evening's session. I've got a ton of like brand new content for this evening because over the course of last year, I've been building all of my trellises, all of my irrigation into my sprout box beds. So I'm really excited to be sharing kind of all my latest learnings with each and every one of you. Now, the first and perhaps most important part is that as we get started here, at the end of our session, we will be giving away one of these 17-inch tall 9-in-1 metal raised beds from Sproutbox. You're going to see tons of these in the videos this evening because I've converted my whole backyard into these. And so you're going to have the chance to be winning one of these and growing out of it for this upcoming season. We'll be selecting the winner at the end. They do need to be on the call, so do make sure that you hang around all the way to the end to potentially be that lucky winner. Now, for those of you, I'd love to hear in the chat function, how many of our live classes have you been on? Is this your first live class, your second live class, third, fourth, fifth? Let me know in the chat function what number of live class this is. Hey, Pam from Utah. I was just down in Zion National Park this past weekend. Okay, third, second, first for Nicole, first for Chris. Love to hear it. For those of you that I haven't met before, that's your first time, my name is Jordan. I'm one of the content partners here at Sproutbox. And when I'm not doing different engagements with Sproutbox, I've also got my own little gardening business called Mind and Soil, where really all that I'm looking to do is run gardening experiments to teach individuals everything that I can about how to be getting their hands dirty into the garden and having as much success as possible. And so if there's one thing that you probably like take away in terms of myself and what you know about me, it is that I absolutely love to run gardening experiments. And when we think about trellising and we think about irrigation, like guys, if you were to look at my irrigation area in my shed, it's like a charcuterie board of different components, different sizes of piping, etc. All of these things I've been testing with to try and figure out what actually helps the plants grow to their fullest potential. And I love doing all this because ultimately I want to pass those learnings along to you to help save you the literal years of trial and error that I've gone through to figure these things out, and also to save you the hundreds to thousands of dollars of materials and tools that I've spent to basically just share with you, hey, this is what works best. It's exactly what I've done in my garden, and you're going to have tons of success with that. And by doing so, it's my hope that each and every one of you have your absolute best, biggest harvest ever, and really just your best season yet. And so for this evening's session, we are, of course, entirely focused on trellising and irrigation. And I was thinking about it earlier today, like, why do I love this session so much? And the way that I would articulate it is we're going to go in this session from good to great. So this right here is what my raised beds look like before any irrigation, before any trellising in place. This is a good setup. But once you have irrigation in there, so it's watering itself while you're out on vacation or you're enjoying summer, trellising so that things are growing vertically, it ends up like this. This right here is a great setup. And this is what each and every one of you are going to be able to do by the end of this session. So the way that we're going to break this down is we're first going to chat through the irrigation and watering component. So how to go about watering your plants, when to know that it's time to be watering them. And then once we've gone through all that, we're going to pause for a couple of questions, do a little bit of Q&A, and then we're going to dive into trellising. I'm going to walk you through a couple of my favorite trellising setups, and just kind of guide you on that front so that you can begin incorporating more vertical growth into your garden. So if you're all set and ready to begin going from good to great, type into the chat function, let's grow, and we'll begin diving into the first portion of this evening, which is all going to be focused on irrigation. Suzanne saying, let's grow. Linda saying, let's grow. Petra saying, let's grow. Love it, love it, love it. Alrighty, let's start diving in here, folks. I'm super excited for the whole season ahead here. So on the watering and irrigation front, let's take a quick step back and let's think through, what do our plants need to thrive, to give us those beautiful cucumbers, tomatoes, squashes that we want to be harvesting later in the year? What do they need in order to do that? Of course, they need sunlight, right? The more sun that we can get to our plants, the better that they're going to grow. They also need warmth, right? There's nothing growing in our garden in January and in February, but then in July and August, in those longest and warmest growing days, everything is growing like weeds. It's because they're getting that sunlight and they're getting that warmth. Now, as they put on all of that growth, they of course also need nutrients, right? For them to be developing all that plant matter, that foliage and those fruits, that requires nutrients from the soil. And the vast majority of that plant matter and of those fruits are water, right? When we think about a tomato, when we think about a cucumber, when we think about a strawberry, pretty much all that is water. So that is, of course, a critical piece that they need in order to be thriving. So if we know that our plants, of course, need water, well, then when do we know that it's time to be watering them so that we're not overwatering them and so we're not underwatering them? And so the way that I encourage you to begin kind of like thinking about this is not following a watering schedule. Because, for instance, for me today, it rained for half the day and now it's sunny. And so if I had a watering schedule, it wouldn't quite be, working to its absolute best. And so what I encourage you to do is to begin the practice of digging down 2 inches into your soil. And take note of this for determining if you need to do your next round of watering. When you dig down into your soil, if it is a dark chocolate and it looks, like it's dark chocolate and it's wet to the touch, you don't need to do your next round of watering. But if it's looking more like this, right, more like a milk chocolate beneath the surface there, especially when we get down 1 to 2 inches and it's dry to the touch, it is absolutely a sign that it's time to do your next watering. So the question then becomes, well, how do we go about watering? And there's 2 ways that we can go about doing this. The first one is, of course, just by hose or by hand watering. And then the second way that we're going to go through is setting up an automated DIY watering setup. So we're going to touch on that one in a second. But first, I wanted to walk through how to go about not just watering by hand, but really watering more effectively by hand. And actually, if we go back just a couple of slides here real quick, as you can see, right, the top soil here, it looks like it's wet and it's watered. But as soon as we dig in, it's not watered. That soil is hydrophobic and it's actually repelling the water away. So if we just gave it a quick spray, our plants are not going to be getting the water that they need in order to thrive. So how do we kind of hand water more effectively? And the way that we're going to go about doing this is by doing watering rounds. So the way that we start is we grab our hose and we're going to go ahead and begin watering our at the soil level. And you're going to do so until the water begins to pool. Because as water pools, it would start running off of the side because it can't get absorbed any faster. So as that water pools, move on to your next plant and repeat that, just going from one plant to the next, watering right at the base of the plant, right into the soil until you've gone through that entire area. That might be one raised bed, that might be two raised beds, three raised beds. The important part is that you go in like a bit of a circle or a bit of a cycle where you're going from one plant to the next. Now, once you've done all the plants in that area, go back to the very beginning and dig down 2 inches. And when you dig down 2 inches, we want to check and see, is it moist now at that kind of depth? Is it still looking dry? And again, this is the challenge, is that a lot of that water, because of how fast it's coming out of the hose, could actually end up just running to the sides. And so we don't want to do usually just one round, but rather we want to do multiple watering rounds. So we dig back down. It's still looking a little bit like milk chocolate there, a little bit dry. And that means we need to do our second round of watering. And you do the exact same thing. So we go from one plant to the next. We spray until the water is going just like this. And then we move on to the next plant to give it some time to absorb into the soil. We go from one plant to the next until we've gone through that whole area and round. And then once we've done that, we go back to the beginning and we dig in again, dig down 2 inches and take note from the soil. Now what we can see is it is that nice dark chocolate that we can see there. It's wet to the touch. Our plants have now been effectively watered. This is way, way better than just giving it a quick spray. And this is really like, again, like the big takeaway here is to be taking note from what the soil is telling us. And so each and every one of us could go ahead and do that, and you'll probably be watering more effectively. But what I want to jump into next is how do we go about building out an automated watering setup? And I'd love just to hear in the chat function real quick, is anybody thinking about setting up an automatic watering system or wants to do that, but is maybe a little bit intimidated or doesn't know how to go about doing it? Let me know in the chat function if this is something that anybody is thinking about. Hey, Julie, great to have you. All right, Annie, Melinda, Margie, yes, amazing. I am so excited to walk you through this because like this is literally one of the areas I've spent so much money and just tried so many different solutions to really figure out what works best. So what we're going to do is I'm going to break down exactly how to go about setting up an automatic watering system so that your garden beds will literally, like, I literally will go on vacation for 7 days this summer and I won't even have anybody come by my house to water my plants because the whole thing is watering itself. Okay. And what I do think is important to note on this is that at the beginning here, it might seem a little bit complex, but just like hang with me for 10 minutes and then let's check in at the end of this. Let's do a little bit of Q&A and get any questions that you have answered. But I think I'm going to make it kind of like fairly simple for each and every one of you. And the way that I encourage you to think about it is kind of like gardening Lego, where we've just got different components that we're going to be attaching to make it perfectly customized for your garden. And so before even going out into the garden and setting it all up, I want to walk you through what this kind of looks like conceptually, right? So out in our beds, we've got raised bed number 1 over here, and we've got raised bed number 2 over here. And right here, let's say that this is the house, right? This is going to connect to our house faucet. And we need to get water out from that house faucet and into my little cardboard raised bed right here and my other cardboard raised bed right there. So the materials that we want to have on hand for that are, we need to have one of these automatic timers. And as you can see here, this has 4 different nozzles on the bottom. So this top one connects to the house, and then we can connect a hose or an irrigation line to the bottom of each of these. and we can have 4 different areas watering at different times as a result of that. And if you're jotting down frantically, all the different supplies here, do know that at the end of this session, I've got a video that I'm going to direct you to where it's got links to every single one of these supplies that I utilize in my irrigation setup. So don't feel like you need to write all this down, because I've got a video at the very end here that I'm going to be able to share it with you. Okay, so this is connected to the house. Coming out the bottom of it, we're going to have a female connector, and that allows us to then connect one of our irrigation lines to it. So coming out the bottom of that, we're then going to be utilizing 1/2-inch main line. Guys, this is literally just a hose, but specifically designed for irrigation. And at the very end of it is just an end cap. So now if we turned on the water from the house, the water is going to come down through our splitter, through nozzle number 3 right here, and out into this irrigation line. And it's going to stop right there. It's not going to make it to our raised beds. So the next thing that we need to do is find a way to get the kind of water from our main line out to our beds. And all that we need to do is just grab more of that 1/2-inch main line, and we're going to run that using a connecting piece I'm going to show you in just a second out to our raised bed. And then a little bit further in that main irrigation line, we're going to have another 1/2-inch line going out to that bed. And I'm going to show you all this in the garden in just a second. I just want to kind of conceptualize it first. So now when we turn on the water, it's coming out through here. It's going out to our bed, but it's not actually getting into our bed. It's just sitting in the hose right here. So the last thing that we need to do is add in some 1/4-inch drip lines. And we run these along the bed every 6 inches. So now when we turn the water on, it's going to come down through the main line, out through this one here, and then it's going to start dripping out of our drip line in that bed, allowing it to get perfectly watered. Okay, I want to pause for just a second just to get some thumbs up from folks. Is this making sense so far? Is everybody still with me on this and how we kind of are building this out to get the water from the house out into our beds? Let me know in the chat function if this is making sense. All right, Sue's with me. That's good. Shayla, Melinda, perfect. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to show you how we do exactly this in the actual garden. So let's take a look here. We've got my garlic growing beautifully. I filmed this earlier this week. This is what my garlic's looking like right now. I'm so happy, thrilled with it. And what we can see is, take a look at my mouse over here. This is where my house faucet is. I need to get the water from here into my bed so that it is watering automatically. So how do we go about doing that? The first thing that we need to do is connect that automatic splitter to our house faucet. So I go up to my house faucet, I pop that into the bottom, and I just, kind of like swivel it on there. Now I can program 4 different watering zones to turn on at 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m., anything like that. Okay, so next thing we need to do from there is we, of course, need to start getting that kind of irrigation line out to the bed. So to do that, we're going to grab our connecting piece, and we're going to connect that to the 1/2-inch irrigation line. And then we just connect that to the bottom here. So this is like, at this point, literally no different than connecting a hose. Like, you could connect a hose to the bottom here, and that would run water out to that area. So now that we've got the 1/2-inch line connected to the timer here, we now need to run it out to the bed. So I just grab that kind of like 50-foot coil, and I run it out to my bed. So if I turned on the water right now, it would come all the way out through here, but it'd be sitting at the bottom of the bed here. So how do we go about getting it up into the bed? And this is where there's kind of like that Lego component. So there's all these really cool connection pieces, such as an L connection point like this, where if we cut our main line, we can now stick that in, and the top one is now going to go up into the bed. So what I do is I basically take that main line that I just ran out, cut it just like that, and then I grab my L piece and I pop it in. So now the angle goes perfectly up to the top of the bed. But now, well, how do I get the irrigation line from the bottom here up to the top? Well, to do that, I measure the height of the bed. I've got the 17-inch tall raised beds. I then measure 1/2-inch line, and I cut it to that height. And then I simply pop it into the other side of that L bracket, and it now runs up to my raised bed. So now the water is going to come through here. It's going to come up to the top. But if I left it like this, it's just going to spill out everywhere. And I want it going into this bed right here. So we grab another one of those L pieces and we pop that into the top, just like so. So now we can get the water coming out this way, but we of course need something across our bed here. So what we do next is we measure our bed to get the width of it. We cut a piece of 1/2 inch main line to that width. And then we just go back to our bed and we connect that to the top of that L piece. We run it across the bed. I like to use some landscape staples just to kind of like keep it in place, keep everything nice and tidy. And then I run it all the way across, and then I grab a end cap and I put that on the very end so that now I turn the water on. It's going all the way up and into that bed, but no water can get out yet. So the next thing that I need to do is run that 1/4 inch drip lines throughout the bed so that the water makes its way out. And so here, what we can see now is the water would run out through this main line, all the way along the soil here, right up to the top, and then it's going to go into our bed just like so. So the next thing that we do to kind of like wrap all this up for our first raised bed here is we grab this little irrigation key and we punch a hole in it, and we use these 1/4 inch connecting pieces to connect our 1/4 inch drip line. And then we just run that all the way across the width of the bed, so it comes out the other side. At that point, we cut it on that side. So you can see I'm chopping it right there. So it's perfectly measured to the length of the bed. And then you just add a little stopper in. So now, as you can see, if I turn that water on, that first line right there, it would be getting watered. But what we, of course, need is water across all of this bed. And so my encouragement to you, there's really like 3 things that I would encourage. First is to run one of these 1/4 inch drip lines every 6 inches. I've found that to work absolutely phenomenally from a water coverage perspective. As you can see, every 6 inches, I have another 1/4 inch drip line going across that bed. The second like really big takeaway that I've learned through all my experimentation is try to keep these less than 8 feet in length. So run more main line so that you can keep your 1/4 inch drip lines only 8 feet. That's going to keep the pressure on all of the emitters nice and high. And the last piece is when it comes to choosing a 1/4 inch drip line, choose one that has an emitter every 6 inches, as that's going to allow you to have like really, really great coverage all throughout the bed. Some of them only have emitters every 12 inches or even every 18 inches, but I like to have it much more densely than that. Okay, I want to pause for just one more second here to see if everybody's still with me. Let me know if this is all making sense so far, if everybody's still with me before we now schedule it to turn on automatically. And just to quickly answer Heather's question here about differences between drip line and soaker hose, I've absolutely tried with both of these. Because soaker hose is dripping all throughout, you have way more pressure at the very beginning than at the end, so you get way more inconsistent watering. Okay, makes sense. Love to hear this. Guys, if you're still with me, you've made it through like hands down the toughest part of setting up DIY irrigation. And this is going to make like just a world of a difference for each and every one of you. Believe me, once you have one of these set up, there's no going back. Okay, perfect. So great question actually from Janice here. So Janice, let's say that your bed was 12 feet. What I would actually encourage you to do is run, you know how I added the 1/2 inch main line to the top of the bed? Add that on both sides and then connect those 2 pieces. So run basically the 1/4 inch drip line coming out of one end all the way to the end of the other one. If you want me to explain that in greater detail, just ask it as a follow-up question at the end of our session. I don't want to confuse people right now, but I'm happy to go into more detail on that. Okay, so now let's kind of walk through how we would go about setting it up so it waters itself automatically. So now we go back to the timer, the very first thing that we set up. I'm going to walk you through each step, and I'm going to show you a video of literally how quick and easy it is to set up. So the first thing that we do is we make sure that we're programming the right zone. So all I would need to do is just click this zone button to move to zone number 2 in this instance, which is where we can see the hose is coming out. Then we want to determine how frequently do we want to go about watering. And I like to go off of every 2 days as my watering. And again, there's times where I'll turn that off if I'm getting rain, or I'll increase it to every 1 day if we're going through a big heat wave. So I set it basically to run every 2 days. And then I set the start time to be on at 6:30 in the morning. And then I want it to run for 25 minutes. So I turn that on and schedule that in. And that is everything. So this is how you go about doing that. So I hit that little button to go up to watering day. And now I'm going to schedule that zone. So again, I want to be scheduling zone 2. So I click that zone button and move it over to zone 2. Now, how frequently do I want to be watering? I want to be watering every 2 days. So I hit that plus button until it goes up every 2 days. And I hit the cycle button to move on to the next part. What time do I want to start at? And excuse me while I fumble around here for a second or two, but I believe I end up programming it for 6:30 in the morning. So hit that button, and then I started second guessing myself. I was at 6 a.m. I can't remember if I actually leave at 6 a.m. I go, yeah, here, we're going to go with 6 a.m. I'm not sure what was going through my mind when I was doing that. Now I move on to the next one. How long do I want it to run for? 25 minutes. And just like that, folks, it is programmed every day or every 2 days at 6 in the morning. That bed is going to turn on, get beautifully watered for 25 minutes. So when you're maybe still asleep or maybe just waking up out in your garden, take a look at this. It's 5:59 a.m. and then 6 a.m., boom, it turns on automatically, watering right at the soil level, 6 inches for the next 25 minutes. How good is that? Let me know if that has been helpful, folks. Let me know in the chat function if that is looking good and making sense in there. Would love to hear. All right. Is everybody still able to hear me okay there? I can see 1 or 2 questions saying the audio is a little bit muffled there. Let me know. It's just coming off of my computer. Perfect. So that is like an introduction to irrigation. And if you want to go deeper into that, I've got a full video on how I set up my irrigation in my sprout box raised beds. And where I go even deeper in that video is that I obviously just showed you how to connect one bed. In this video, I show you how to connect like up to like 5 or 6 beds, however many you want. I also, rather than running the piping just kind of on the soil level and through the outside of the bed, I show you how to bury it all and build it in through the bottom of the bed. So it's all fully integrated. You'd never actually even see or tell that there's water or irrigation set up in there. And that's also where you'll find all the links for those products that I just walked you through. So if you want to see all that, just look up Mind and Soil Irrigation on YouTube. You're going to come across this video and it's got the full rundown in there. Perfect. All right, I want to pause for just a minute or two to answer any questions or maybe answer like 5 or 6 questions on the irrigation front before we transition into the trellising side here. Yes, Janice, I absolutely agree. I would go with 1/4-inch drip line over soaker hoses or any other emitters at this point, to be honest. Patty, no, this is not similar to hydroponics because hydroponics is growing in a, like a soilless medium. This is just running water out to your beds there. Yes, Jeff makes a great point. Don't have it scheduled to be running when you're, showering, because that would then be splitting the water between the two there. Jeff, in terms of installing mid-season, run it through the outside of your beds and just get it in there, lay it on top of the soil, all that. It's still going to save you tons and tons of time when it comes to watering. It's also going to ensure that your plants are getting watered way more effectively. And then as you move into the next season, it's actually like kind of a good thing because you'll see what you liked about it, any tweaks or adjustments you want to make, and then you can kind of like go ahead and bury the rest of it into the ground if you would so desire. Steve, great question there. I don't use any clamps on any of mine, and I haven't had a single one burst or pop. They're a little bit like barbed, so once it goes over that barb, it's really difficult for it to pull off. Yeah, so Heather, let's chat through that kind of like that longer piece. So I am a big believer that keeping them to 8 feet in length is ideal because then you have equal pressure on all the little emitters. But let's say that you have a longer bed, right? That your bed is 12 feet or 16 feet, And so let's say that this is your bed right here. And what you saw me do, right, was I brought that header and I put it at the very end of the bed right here. And then I ran my 1/4 inch drip lines across the bed. Now, if this was a 12-foot or a 16-foot bed, not only would I bring a header on this side, I would also bring a header on this side. And now when I connect my 1/4 inch drip line and I run all the way across the bed, rather than connecting it to a stopper, I'm actually going to connect it to the main line over here, because now the main line, or that header on each side, is pushing water into each of it. So if this is 12 feet going across, but we've got a 1/2 inch main line here and a 1/2 inch main line here, it's really only like 6 feet that it has to get to from this side and 6 feet that it has to get to from that side. So that would be the way that I would go about basically kind of like using it in a larger area. Mike, the giveaway is happening a little bit later on. Don't you worry. Great. Love to hear it, Heather. Perfect. Brent's asking about irrigation kits. At the links in that video, there are some kits in there that are going to give you pretty much all the supplies that you need. You'll still need to buy the 1/4 inch drip line separately. That's the one thing that doesn't come in those kits there. Okay. Yeah, Crystal, exactly. It's really just like a grid that you're connecting there. Okay, amazing. I'm thrilled to hear that this is resonating with everybody. Going to go ahead and dive into trellising, but would love just some quick feedback. How has this been so far? Has anybody learned anything new? Is anybody feeling a little bit more set up for this upcoming season? Let me know in the chat function before we dive into trellising. And yeah, just a couple questions in terms of if you run it all year or what you do through the winter. I leave the irrigation lines out all year, but I disconnect the electric automatic timer from the faucet, and I put that inside. And then I turn off my house water as well so that no pipes burst. But everything that's like buried and in the garden, I just leave it all out there through the winter. And I haven't had anything break or bust on that front either. All right, so convenient. Love to hear it. Learning some new things. Helen, I know you can do this. I know you can do this. Amazing. All righty, folks. Well, let's now go ahead and move into trellising. And so for this, we're really thinking through how do we kind of like maximize the square footage in our garden spaces. And I use tons and tons of trellises all throughout my space. So the first question is really like, why do we want to go about trellis things vertically? And the first piece is that like absolutely maximizes our. Take a look at these tomatoes right here. So by the end of the season, they grew all the way up to the top of this 7-foot trellis. And so if I didn't have that plant trellis vertically, one plant would have sprawled all the way across this bed. So I would have been able to fit one plant in there. But by trellising it vertically, it's now using the space this way, which means those remaining 7 feet are open and I can run 7 more plants vertically. So way more square footage that I've opened up by trellising vertically. Second piece is that it really opens up our sun exposure. So I was able to remove all the bottom foliage here. So all these plants up above are getting beautiful sun exposure, but then also the basil down below, it's all getting sun. It's not crowded out by something sitting right on top of it. And then the last piece is that by opening it up in this way, we're creating more airflow throughout, and that's going to decrease any disease, such as a blight or a powdery mildew. It's going to slow down any of those from settling into our plants. So those are the big reasons for why to go about trellising. Obviously, the first one there is the biggest one on my front. It just massively increases the amount that we can be growing. Now, what plants benefit from trellising, right? What are the plants that we want to think through? Oh yeah, we should get this on a trellis and grow it vertically. And there's quite a few on this front. So certainly tomatoes, cucumbers, squashes, melons, snap peas, pole beans, really anything that's on a vine or going to be running along and like growing kind of like in a long viney type of manner. Those are things that will really, really benefit and appreciate being trellised vertically. Okay, so what I want to walk you through now are a couple of my favorite trellising options. And more than anything, I hope that what this does is it kind of like percolates some ideas on your end, either to use exactly that or different structures that you could potentially utilize for your unique growing space. Ultimately, a trellis is just anything that allows our plants to grow vertically. So let's get started with one of my absolute favorite trellises, which is this cucumber A-frame trellis. And the reason why I love this trellis so much is because I can plant one cucumber at the base of each of these, at base of each square foot at the bottom. So for just this little one that right here, that's 4 feet in width, I can plant 4 on this side, 4 on that side. And as the plant begins to grow, its tendrils are going to pull onto this. And as it does that, the main stem is going to continue growing vertically, but we're also going to get these suckers beginning to emerge. And off of those suckers, we're going to get more leaves, which are basically our solar panels. So the plant is able to absorb more of the sun's energy, and we're going to get more flowers. So the harvest that you're going to get is going to massively, massively increase, because this is just going to turn into a huge cucumber wall later on in the season. So the way that we go about building this is that the first thing we need is one of these cattle panels right here. You get this at any like big box store, like a Home Depot, and you're going to cut it right down the middle. So we want to cut it in half, so we've got 2 separate panels. For this, you do need bolt cutters in order to be able to do so. You're just going to go ahead and chop it like that. Okay, now we've got our first panel that is ready, but we need to, of course, connect it to a frame. And in order to connect it to a frame, we need to build a frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure the top and therefore also the bottom of it. We're going to tick that on a piece of 2x2 wood. And then just kind of draw that line across. And then you're going to saw that off for both the top piece and the bottom piece, right? I'm just repeating it for top and bottom there. Okay. And then we go ahead and we pop that one on the top, make sure that everything lines up nice and good, and that one on the bottom. So we got the first 2 pieces, but now we need to measure the 2 sides here. So we measure both of our sides and we cut the wood to that height. So we now have basically the frame to be connecting our trellis to. Right? So now, as you can see, trellis, it's sitting perfectly on there. It's just a matter of now starting to connect those pieces. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to build we want to connect the frame before we connect the panels to it. So to do that, I like to just pre-drill 2 holes into each corner, and then I drop my screws into each one of those corners. And then by doing that, 2 screws in each, I've then got my kind of outside structure all set. I grab my panel, and then I grab chicken staples and I hammer those in right over top of the metal on each of the different areas there on the panel, so that it is now stapled onto that wooden frame. I repeat that for both sides, and now I'm left with basically like the 2 sides of my A-frame, but they're obviously not yet connected. So the next thing that we do from there is we add 2 hinges on. So we grab, say, a piece of plywood to create a little bit of space so it all kind of like sits nice and even. And then we pop our hinge in there, pre-drill our holes, and we screw those in so that it is now sitting on hinges and can open to however wide or however narrow we want. So as you can see, that opens up nice and easily, just like so. Once we've got that all done, we simply grab that, we pop it over into our garden, and we could again set it up as narrow or as wide as we would like. I can see a question from Bond here. How tall is this? This is sitting just under 4 feet in height. It's about 3.5 feet tall there. And what's so cool about this, right, is now rather than just having one cucumber planted in the garden, we've now got it with a structure that it can grow vertically. We can plant literally right at each of those little emitters so that it has the water right where its roots are going to grow. Again, this is what I mean about going from a good setup to an absolutely great setup. Okay, so that is the cucumber trellis right there. And, every single season I'm utilizing this. And since I've made the transition to utilizing this style of trellis, I literally am just getting like bowl full or bucket full of cucumber week over week over week, to the point that I'm giving them away to neighbors. I know this is going to be happening for each and every one of you. Next one that I want to walk through is this tomato trellis right here. I know a lot of us absolutely love to grow tomatoes, and growing them vertically up a trellis, hands down the most efficient way to do so. It just opens up so much space. Also really easy to harvest and decreases any of that disease from settling in. And what's so cool about this particular one is that, as you can see at the bottom down here, I literally built it into my sprout box raised bed by utilizing the existing bolt holes on the bed. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first thing that we need for this are 3 8-foot tall 2x4s. And we're going to cut 2 of them down to 7 feet in height. Okay, so the first 2, we're going to cut those down to 7 feet in height. Those are going to serve as the outside of the bed here. Going all the way up to 8 feet, it ends up just being a little bit tall. So 7 feet, that's plenty of space for our tomatoes to be growing. So now we've got the outsides of it built, but we need that beam that sits across the middle. And because I'm going to end up moving this into the inside of the bed, I need to measure the inside of the bed to get the length that I want to have for that top beam. So all that I do is I grab my measuring tape and I measure the inside of my bed all the way across, and it's just under 8 feet because I'm using one of the extension kits. So I then take that measurement and I measure my third 8-foot 2x4, and I chop it down to the height that I need to sit across that bed, which is about 93 inches. Okay. After we've done that, just like our cucumber trellis, we need to then go ahead and connect the different sides. So I line it up on my deck here, nice and flat, kind of get everything all squared. And then I pre-drill 2 holes. I pop the screws in. And then I also like to use an L bracket on the inside of each of them just to make it a little bit more stable and a little bit more secure. And just like that, I've now got the kind of outside of that structure all nicely built. So then I bring it over to my sprout box raised bed and I lift it up, easier with 2 people, and pop it in to begin lining it up with those bolt holes. And on this front, as you can see, the one thing that I am doing there is I am just double checking and making sure that's all nice and level. And I'm using a couple of clamps on the side of my bed to do so. Definitely do that before you start drilling the holes through, just to make sure that everything is nice and square. You set it up once and then you're set and good for the rest of time there. Now, once you have that all set up and ready to be attached to the raised bed, the next thing that you want to do is you want to remove the bolts that come with the bed and buy some 2-inch bolts to put directly through that. And now you're going to go ahead and drill directly through your bed, through that existing bolt hole that's already there. So you don't need to make any incisions in the bed, and directly through the wood on the other side. That gives you a nice hole to then drop that first bolt through, and it comes all the way through the piece of wood, and coming out the other side, you're connecting it with a washer and nut. I'm going to play this one more time just so we can see how that all works, right? So we've got the bolts in there. We removed them. Give it a second here. And now once the wood's in there, it's all leveled. I drill that hole through. I put the bolt all the way through that. I connect the washer, and then I connect the nut on the other side of that to secure it in place. And what I like to do is I basically go from one side back to the other so that it doesn't start pulling in one direction, but rather stays nice and level and even throughout. So once I have that first one in, I go to the other side of the bed and I begin to pop that bolt in. I add my washer, add the nut. Same thing, I cut or drill the next hole in. I just keep on adding it one by one until all 4 bolts are back into the bed, but now also connected to the trellis. And just like that, you've now got a 7-foot tall trellis in your tomato bed. So the last thing, of course, to do would then be to be digging your transplant holes and popping your tomatoes in. So I like to go 1 per square foot. I pop it out of the transplant hole, and then you're going to grab some yarn or twine and tie it onto the main stem. And then you're going to run that vertically over the top of the trellis and tie that off. So there's a string that runs from the plant all the way up to the top. And as the plant grows, you simply weave it through that yarn or twine, and that's going to keep it growing nice and tall and vertically, which is just going to open up so much space for you there. Okay. So we got our tomatoes in the bed now. We fast forward a few months. Again, I think this was in July, folks. By the time that we got to August, they were literally growing taller than the top of these. And I think that from these, kind of like 2 raised beds here, it ended up being around probably between like 2,500 to 3,000 cherry tomatoes that I got off of those plants last year. They were absolutely, absolutely prolific. Totally incredible on that front. So that is how we set up the tomato trellis. Now, I've got one more trellis that I want to show you guys. And I think the reason why it's a really important one to show you is because either of these two that I just went through, that A-frame trellis or this tomato trellis here, it really is going to take a full day when it comes to prepping the area, buying the supplies, cutting them down, setting them up, all that type of stuff. Like, it really is like at least a full day project. And on top of that, like, I just want to quickly go back to, let's say the tomato trellis here, just to show you how many different kind of like tools and things are needed throughout, right? So I need to buy all that wood. I need to have a measuring tape there. I need to have a saw to cut it. I need to have my clamps to be, making sure everything is staying nice and level there. I then need to be buying the hardware, such as those, drill bits, and then the screws as well to be connecting all of it, the L brackets for the inside. So there is quite a bit that goes into, kind of like additional supplies that are needed in order to make these trellises happen, which is why I'm super thrilled to share that Sproutbox for this season has just launched their very own arch trellis. And so this fits literally seamlessly into your existing Sproutbox raised beds. And this particular trellis, in terms of like what varieties would grow well on it, you could 100% plant tomatoes right here, grow them vertically. You could plant cucumbers right there, grow them vertically. You could have squashes growing up this way, or melons, and have those fruits actually hanging off the inside of the plant, and then be harvesting them from up above your head. And then even things like peas or beans, those would grow so perfectly up this. But the reason why I love this trellis so much is because it comes with everything you need right out of box, and it connects directly into your Sproutbox raised bed into those existing bolt holes. So you don't have to do any of that measuring, leveling, double checking, figuring things out. My bet is that from the point of opening that box to having it set up in your raised bed would be less than 30 minutes. All of it comes assembled, kind of like ready to be assembled in there. And in just a second, I'm going to share a little bit of a sale that they're doing right now to help me getting these out into the wild. So I'm super excited to begin playing around with this. And again, I don't think that there is a plant that you couldn't trellis going up this, and anything you put up it would look absolutely beautiful. But just before we get to that, if you utilize the kind of tips that I've walked through from both an irrigation and a trellising perspective, again, the motto for this evening is all about going from good to, in a few months from now, absolutely great. I know that each and every one of you, by utilizing tips, are going to be getting piles and piles of cucumbers, to the point that you're like, get these away from me. I don't want to pickle anymore. I can't eat anymore. Please, neighbors, come and take these away from me. You're going to have those beautiful melons or squashes hanging from the inside of your Sproutbox trellis that you can have a beautiful picture with, or of course, harvest from as well. You'll have snap peas growing up there you can grab just right off the vine, snack, and eat. And of course, hundreds, potentially thousands of tomatoes for you to be enjoying both fresh and preserved through those winter months later on in the year as well. So folks, that's everything that I wanted to cover off on for this evening in terms of irrigation and trellising. Still remaining for this evening, we of course got to do our giveaway, which we're going to do right now. And then I got that Sproutbox sale that I want to share with you. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A. Any questions that you guys have, I'm here. I want to answer as many of them as possible. So let's now dive into our giveaway. And my one rule when it comes to giveaways is that whoever the lucky winner is that we celebrate them winning. We're pumped. We're stoked for them. That way we're able to continue doing these. So the lucky winner of the 17-inch tall metal 9-in-1 raised bed from Sproutbox is Michelle Sportak. Michelle, do we have you in the chat function here? Michelle, are you with us? Let's see. Bum, bada, bum, bada, bum, bum, bum. I can see Michelle's name just a few posts ago. All righty. I have a feeling your name's about to pop up. Michelle, there you are. Woohoo! All right. Congratulations, Michelle. The Sproutbox team will be getting in touch with you and sending off a 17-inch tall 9-in-1 metal raised bed to you. So congratulations, Michelle. Now, on top of that, the Sproutbox team does have a really cool limited time sale going on. There's two of them that I want to share with you. The first one is that beautiful trellis that I just shared with you. It is 20% off for each and every one of you that have joined this session. This isn't a sale that they're sharing live with anybody else. It is for this group. So use the code LIVE20 to get 20% off your Sproutbox trellis. And the link for that is in the description. And the Sproutbox team, they're going to share the link in the chat function here as well, where you can get your hands on that. And then if anybody is really looking to kind of like join the Sproutbox team here, they're also doing, if you buy 4 of the raised beds, you get 50% off a trellis. And the link for that is in the description of this video, right below the video player that you're watching me on right now. So you can go ahead and get set up on that front as well. They might have some other sales going on right now as well. I'll let that team chime in with any other sales that they'd like to share with anybody. But absolutely the right time to be getting the raised beds into the garden, all set up and growing some absolutely beautiful produce, vegetables, flowers for this upcoming season. So with that all being said, folks, I would absolutely love to now open it up for some Q&A. If you've got any questions on irrigation, trellising, or anything else on the gardening front, begin just firing those into the chat function, and I'm happy to hang out online here for as long as we would like to get them answered. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that so much. Thank you for the kind words here, folks. Yeah, Michelle, grab yourself a trellis when you get that one sent off to you. Get the full perfect setup here. I know one of you are going to have that trellis and have the squashes growing over top of it. And you're going to get that picture with like squashes or pumpkins or gourds over top of your head. I can't wait to see which one of you that ends up being. Okay. What kind of wood did you use for your trellises? That's just cedar that I have utilized there. So yeah, I use cedar in my beds for the, kind of any of the wooden structures. Same thing with the A-frame trellis. That was cedar that I was using as the frame on that. Okay. Melinda, great question. How would you set up irrigation for the pots and how long to run the water? So yeah, I have a whole bunch of grow bags as well. Basically, I run the main line out to that area. And then I add basically just in this instance, I use like a little bubbler and I run one of those into the grow bag. I put that bubbler in and then there's an adjustment piece on the top of it where I can turn the water to run really, really low. And then I have that still run for the same 25 minutes every 2 days. And one other note on that front is I love to put straw over top of all of these as well, because that straw really helps protect the soil and prevent the sun from drying it all up. So that's one way to kind of be watering even more effectively. Oh, thanks, Suzanne. Love to hear that. Bon, I'll let the Sproutbox team chime in on the best dimensions for setting the trellis up and if you're able to fit it into one bed there. Moira, I have not had any like increased slug issues by having straw in my beds. So yeah, I absolutely love it. Cal, the straw that I utilize is from Garden Straw. You could look up, if you look up healthy straw or garden straw, that's the one that I utilize there. You are always going to get some level of just volunteer seeds, like wheat seeds that germinate. The way that I like to go about doing it is I basically let everything grow for about 3 to 4 weeks so that all the seeds germinate. And then I just do a one-time weeding on them, get them all out, and then I don't have to weed those beds for the rest of the season. So I do believe that there is a one-time weeding that is required, and I like to wait and kind of let some of them grow a little bit so I can just do it all in one fell swoop. Crystal, your first tomato bed you showed with 7, how long was the bed to support that many? That was in, so that is like one of these sprout box here. They come at 6.5 feet in length, but they have this thing called an extension kit. And that's basically just like an extra panel in here that you could add in to make your bed like this one back here as long as you want. You just keep on adding those. So what I did was I grabbed that, the 17-inch tall 9-in-1 raised bed, which would be 6.5 feet. And then I added one of those extension kit panels in to make it 8 feet in length. So it ends up being 8 feet in length that I had there. And I like to plant one tomato plant every square foot. And yeah, Julie, I think you're spot on with that wheat seeds do pull out super, super easy. Okay, in terms of 1/4-inch drip line, I can see a couple questions on this one coming through. So one option would be just to buy it online through like an Amazon or Lee Valley. For anybody that is in the Vancouver Lower Mainland area, there's a place, I believe it's called Vancouver Irrigation Supply, and they have a particular brand. It's called Agrifim, Agrifim. And I found their 1/4-inch drip lines to basically give the most consistent water, kind of like a amount that's being emitted from each one of the emitters. So I really, really like utilizing their particular 1/4-inch drip line with the emitters every 6 inches. I find it to be just like the most even watering from like the 1st foot to the 7th foot of that run. Michelle, you're going to absolutely love straw. Look up Mind and Soil straw. You'll see a bunch of videos that I've done on how I utilize garden straw in my sprout box raised beds. I literally put the drip lines underneath it, and things like, I kid you not, things grew 20 to 30% larger when I was utilizing garden straw last year. For this year, I'm putting it across all of my sprout box raised beds. Yeah, Julie, the name of that company is Agrifim, Agrifim. Perfect. Love to hear it. Okay, from Bond, my potting soil based beds seem to be getting more and more compacted. Any way I can loosen it up without massive digging? Like it's difficult because you could dig it up and reset it so that it's got like more organic matter in it. Ultimately, if you're utilizing a lot of compost, like up to 75% compost in your beds, then it could be nice and compacted. It's still going to be super easy for the plants to grow through because that's just such a big particle size. So if you're not using lots of compost, then I would encourage you to begin practicing that. Now, if your beds don't have a great deal of compost in them just yet, my encouragement would be to use this season to basically like rototill those, add in a ton of compost. Right? Like pretty much up to like, 50-50 split of your existing soil plus new compost. And then, rototill that all together because that's going to be a beautiful, beautiful growing medium for all the subsequent seasons. If you're looking for kind of like the path of least effort, you want to utilize like a broad fork. So some kind of like pitchfork, broad fork that you can get in there to loosen it all up, and then add your compost on top after that. And that compost is going to work its way into those holes, and by virtue of that, start to loosen it up a little bit as well. Great questions. All right, cool. I can see a couple of other recommendations for Agrifim. Awesome to hear that there's some other spots that have it. I have really, really liked that drip line here. Again, let me do the spend the money, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then I just pass along all the learnings to you guys. I love this approach so much. Sue, the cool square foot planting template, that's actually something that I've created, and you'd be able to find on my website. So if you go to mindandsoil.com, you go to the tools section, you'll find the spacing tile in there. I can definitely get that shipped out to you straight away. Brian, great question. Great question from Brian here. Also, I love the fact we still have like 120 people on the call here, just doing a little bit of Q&A. So Brian's question is, are you no dig or full till? I'm actually neither. I feel like this is like a team question. Like, are you team whatever or whatever? The way that I go about, let me take a step back first. When it comes to my raised beds, obviously there's no soil in there when you set them up. And the soil blend that I go with for my raised beds is 75% compost and 25% vermiculite. So I mix up 3 parts compost, 1 part vermiculite, blend that all up nice and good, and I throw that into my beds. And once I've established that bed, I do not till it ever. For the upcoming season, I just top the bed up with 1 to 2 inches of compost in the springtime. Now, that's what I do in my raised beds. Now, let's say that you're growing in ground, right? You're digging into your native soil and planting into that. So in that instance, you're likely to be planting into a material that's very, very high in sand or clay and has no organic material in it. So if you just added compost on top, it's going to take years for it to work its way into that soil and become a nice homogeneous mixture. So in a in-ground environment, what I do is I prep the area. So I've got my native soil exposed with no grass, no weeds in it, anything like that. And then I put like 6 inches of compost down. And then I grab my rototiller and I rototill down as far as I can. Like I'm talking like a good 12 inches down to basically mix up 6 inches of native soil with 6 inches of compost into one homogeneous 12-inch mixture. This is effectively what would happen naturally over the course of 4 or 5 years of planting into it, those roots loosening things up, that organic matter then dying, breaking down, becoming part of the soil. But I don't want to wait 4 or 5 years in order to have a really great medium, which is why in that instance, I practice a 1 till pass. Like I would till it in that first season, get all that compost worked in there. And then in the subsequent seasons, I just leave those beds as they are. I add 1 to 2 inches of compost over top, and they do absolutely phenomenally. Like literally one of my absolute best, highest performing beds is an in-ground bed in my front yard where I do all my cut flowers. And that process that I just walked through in terms of like clearing the area, putting down 6 inches of compost, tilling that in to make a nice homogeneous mixture, that is exactly what I do with it. Okay. Great question from Leanne here. How to winterize the irrigation system? Honestly, Leanne, all that I do is, so if you want to be like really technical with it, you would grab an air compressor and you'd remove the automatic timer from the house faucet and from your irrigation setup. So your automatic timer, it goes into the house. Then you have basically like, let's call this right here, the irrigation line, the 1/2-inch line that's then running out into your garden beds. You'd grab an air compressor and you'd connect it to the top of this and you blow air through your irrigation lines, which is pushing all the water out. The reason why you do that is because when that water freezes in the winter, it would expand and potentially crack some of those things. However, if you basically just, remove your irrigation top, there's going to become some space in there, right? Some of the water is going to drip out in the beds. There's going to be space in those tubes. And so I've never used that air compressor to like blow out all of my lines. And I've never had a single one of them crack or break, anything like that as I lead into the next season. So the only thing that I do is I just disconnect the automatic timer from both the lines and the house faucet. And I turn off the house faucet so that there's no water sitting in that line. And then bring the automatic timer inside so that it doesn't freeze through the winter. Okay. Okay, I can see Crystal chiming in on the turning front for Bond there. That's great. Oh, thanks so much, Julie. I appreciate that. It's great to have you. From Sue, can you comment on adding composted manure, for example, composted hen manure? So any kind of fresh manure, so anything that's coming from an animal, I like to put that through my compost first. So put that into your compost pile, allow it to break down and kind of like cool off for 3 to 6 months. I wouldn't want to grab chicken poop or cow poop or hen poop and put it directly into my raised bed. I want it to go through the compost first, just so it isn't too hot where it could then ultimately end up burning some of the plants. And then after 3-6 months, work that compost into your beds 1 to 2 inches on the top there. That's the way that I would go about it. Brian, on the vermiculite front, I think you're totally fine. I think if you like some of the beds, I've also done 75% compost and then 25% pro mix. So that's just a combination of some peat moss and some perlite. Things still grow phenomenally well in that. The only difference between the two of those is that peat moss and perlite, they don't retain very much moisture, but vermiculite, it does a phenomenal job at retaining moisture. So you'll just find that that soil dries up a little bit quicker than the beds that have the vermiculite in it. And if you did want one option for ordering vermiculite online is through uline.com. They can ship huge bags of it to your door. Obviously a little bit of a shipping fee, but that'd be one way that you can get like 110 liter bags delivered directly to your door. All of it is food safe as well there. Thanks so much, Sue. Appreciate it. That was to Sue Oliver, and Sue Gold is totally right. That's exactly correct. Yeah, the difference between vermiculite and perlite is that vermiculite retains moisture. Perlite is a volcanic rock. It's really, really nice. So it's not really, really light. So it's nice from an aeration perspective, but it doesn't retain any moisture. So it's going to be a drier environment. All right. Jeff, I totally hear you on not ever wanting to till your beds and the murdering of the worms. That's why I do it just at the very kind of like that first time there before they've all made their way in, before that ecosystem has set up. At that point, it's really just like the native soil that I'm loosening up and some, compost that, is broken down, but there wouldn't be too many worms in that compost I'm utilizing there. Yeah, Bon, I get a lot of stuff from John's Plant Factory as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Any other questions here, folks? Bon, no, vermiculite and compost will not clump up. It honestly is one of like the most like beautiful, like velvety mixtures that I've ever come across. It just like kind of like crumbles nicely in your hand. That combination is, just absolutely perfect. Zero chance of any compaction happening if you're utilizing 75% compost, 25% vermiculite. Yeah, Julie, I'm in the same boat there. Once the beds are set up, I don't do any tilling there. Perfect. Any other last questions before we wrap up here, folks? My pleasure, Tammy. I love doing the experiments, and I can't tell you how many I have planned for this season because there's a lot on the go. Keep your eyes peeled on my YouTube channel. This weekend, I'm launching an experiment video where I tested different heights of grow lights. So what's the most optimal height to have your grow lights at for your plants to be growing super well? And then the following week, I'm just wrapping up an experiment in 3 of my sprout box raised beds where I'm testing no cover over top of the bed, a garden fleece cover over top of the bed, and a polytunnel over top of the bed. So basically, when it comes to early season planting, does having a cover over top of our beds create more warmth and help our plants grow really well? Or does it block a bit of that sun out and actually hinder the plants and slow them down? So keep your eyes peeled for that one as well. Super interesting results in that one. Alrighty, folks. Well, we will go ahead and wrap up here. I can see one question from Leanne. Same drip line spacing for tomatoes? Absolutely. Just go with 1/4 inch drip line, 6-inch emitters every 6 inches on that drip line, and then add a new drip line every 6 inches to your main line. You'll have phenomenal success. All right, everybody, that is everything for this evening. Thank you all for all the amazing questions and engagement. I know that each and every one of your gardens are going to go from good to great this year. I'll catch you all on the next live class. See y'all then.